Hello, and welcome to our channel, where we explore spiritual history with a global perspective. Imagine a proud soldier lying broken on a battlefield, his worldly ambitions shattered by a cannonball. Yet from this devastation blooms a destiny to change the world. This is the story of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, a man of arms transformed into a saintly pilgrim, mystic, and founder of the Jesuits. In this video, we journey through his dramatic life, from daring battles to mystical visions, and discover how his faith and work continue to inspire people today. Inigo de Loyola, the future Ignatius, was born in 1491 to a noble Basque family in northern Spain. As a young man, he dreamed of chivalry and glory, a true knight at heart, fond of fine clothes, swordplay, and the admiration of royalty. By age 30, he was an officer defending the fortress of Pamplona against a French attack. There, in May 1521, Ignatius's life changed in an instant. A cannonball struck him, shattering one leg and wounding the other. His bravery impressed even his enemies, who carried the gravely injured soldier back to his family castle instead of taking him prisoner. Facing death and despair, the once proud knight found himself humbled and broken. Yet this seeming disaster was the beginning of a far greater battle within his soul, one that would redefine his life's purpose. Remarkably, when his condition worsened, Ignatius prayed, and on the feast of Saints Peter and Paul, he took an unexpected turn for the better, surviving against the odds. He would walk with a limp thereafter, a living reminder of that fateful day. During long months of recuperation at Loyola Castle, Ignatius was restless and bored, longing for tales of knights and romance. But only two books were available to him, A Life of Christ and a collection of saints' lives. Desperate for diversion, he read them and soon was captivated. As he read about Jesus and holy men and women, something stirred in his heart. Ignatius noticed a profound difference in himself. After imagining worldly adventures or a noble lady, he felt empty and unsatisfied. But when he pondered the lives of saints or the teachings of Christ, he felt a deep peace and inspiration. This gentle inner tug of war was the start of his conversion. In that quiet castle, God was teaching Ignatius the art of discernment. He learned to recognize which desires left him restless and which brought true peace. Day by day, the proud soldier began to yield to a new commander, the call of Christ. By the time his leg healed, Ignatius had resolved to lay aside dreams of worldly honor and instead emulate the saints in serving God. In early 1522, limping but determined, he left home forever, intent on a spiritual quest that was just beginning. Ignatius set out as a pilgrim, renouncing his old life. His first destination was a mountaintop shrine of the Virgin Mary at Our Lady of Montserrat in Catalonia. There, beneath the gentle gaze of the Black Madonna, Ignatius performed a moving vigil. On the night of March 24th, 1522, he hung up his sword and dagger before Mary's altar, a knight laying down his arms at the feet of his queen. He kept an all-night vigil in prayer, confessing his sins and weeping for his past, as if dubbing himself now a knight of Christ. By morning, he had given away his fine clothes to a poor man and clothed himself in a simple pilgrim's robe and sandals. This was a public surrender of all his former vanities, a dramatic, sacred offering of his old self. Ignatius left Montserrat as a radically changed man, no longer Inigo the courtier, but a penitent traveler carrying only a sackcloth and the desire to follow Jesus. In this humble guise, he headed towards the town of Manresa, not yet knowing the profound trials and graces that awaited him there. What was meant to be a brief stop in the small riverside town of Manresa turned into an intense 10-month spiritual retreat. Ignatius dwelled in a simple cave outside town, living in extreme austerity. He ate sparingly, begged for his food, and spent hours each day in prayer and penance. He even helped the sick at a local hospice in between his long vigils. Yet these were not easy months. Ignatius faced inner turmoil. Bouts of scruples, darkness, and feelings of unworthiness plagued him. He pushed himself to the brink, at times neither trimming his hair nor taking care of his body, hoping extreme penance would bring him closer to God. It was a period of both painful purification and profound insight. During this time, Ignatius started jotting down notes and prayers that would eventually grow into his famous spiritual manual, the Spiritual Exercises. In the silence of the cave, he was like a metal being refined in fire. Though he felt great hardship, grace was building within him, preparing him for a breakthrough. Little did Ignatius know that one of the most illuminating moments in his life was soon to occur along the banks of the nearby river Cardoner. One day, as Ignatius sat by the flowing river Cardoner outside Manresa, he experienced a mystical illumination that he would later describe with awe. Gazing at the water, the eyes of his understanding began to open, and in that instant, God flooded his soul with insight. Ignatius would say that he learned more in that moment than in all the rest of his life. It was not a vision in the sense of seeing heavenly figures, rather it was an overwhelming enlightenment of his mind and heart. In this divine light, all of creation seemed new. He perceived God's presence in everything around him. The trees, the river, the sky, everything spoke to him of the Creator's love. This grace, often called the Cardoner vision, left Ignatius overflowing with joy and understanding. It cemented one of the key principles of his spirituality, finding God in all things. After this experience, the once conflicted penitent emerged with clarity and inner peace. Ignatius now knew that the world was charged with the grandeur of God, and his purpose was to help others see that glory. Strengthened by this encounter with the divine, he was ready to move forward. In early 1523, Ignatius continued his pilgrimage with a heart on fire, bound next for the Holy Land. Ignatius's yearning to walk in Jesus' footsteps led him to set sail for the Holy Land. He arrived in Jerusalem, hoping to stay and preach there, but the Franciscan guardians quickly saw the danger. The region was under tense Turkish rule. They ordered Ignatius to leave for his own safety, and under obedience, he reluctantly departed. Though disappointed, he trusted God had other plans. At 33 years old, Ignatius found himself back in Europe as a pilgrim with a new mission. He would seek an education and become a priest. There was one problem. He had never learned Latin, the key to higher studies. Undeterred, this former soldier sat in classrooms with schoolboys in Barcelona to grasp the basics of grammar. Over the next several years, his unusual path took him to universities in Alcalá and Salamanca. His zeal for sharing about God kept drawing attention. Twice, the Spanish Inquisition detained him, suspicious of this unordained man teaching people to pray. But no fault was found, and Ignatius refused to abandon his helping of souls. Finally, he journeyed to the renowned University of Paris to complete his studies. There, amid the bustling intellectual life, Ignatius gathered around him a circle of devoted friends, Francois, Francis, Peter Faber, and several other young men who were touched by Ignatius's fervor and guided through his spiritual exercises. This band of brothers, the first companions, bonded in faith and vision as they dreamed of serving Christ together. In 1534, on the Feast of the Assumption, Ignatius and 6 companions climbed a hill in Montmartre, Paris, and vowed to live in poverty and chastity and to go on mission to Jerusalem, or, if that proved impossible, to offer themselves to the Pope for whatever service he saw fit. With that sacred vow, the seeds of a new spiritual army were planted, though they did not yet call themselves an order. Ignatius's journey as a leader was only just beginning. In 1537, Ignatius and his companions found their plan to return to the Holy Land blocked by war. Remembering their Montmartre promise, they headed to Rome instead to offer their service to Pope Paul III. As they approached Rome, Ignatius experienced another extraordinary vision at a small roadside chapel in Storta. While deep in prayer, he saw Christ carrying his cross, and beside him, God the Father spoke to Ignatius, "I will be favorable to you in Rome," and declared, "I will place you with my son." This mystical encounter confirmed to Ignatius that God was with them in this venture. It was as if heaven itself commissioned them for the work awaiting in Rome. With renewed courage, Ignatius entered the holy city. There, the Pope received the group warmly and soon put them to work teaching and preaching. On Christmas morning of 1538, Ignatius, who had been ordained a priest during the waiting period, finally celebrated his first Mass, appropriately choosing the St. Mary Major Basilica in Rome. He offered Mass in the chapel that enshrined the very manger where Jesus was believed to have been laid at birth. Since he could not travel to Bethlehem or Jerusalem to say his first Mass, Ignatius found a touching consolation: to worship Christ at the crib in Rome, uniting his devotion to the Lord's incarnation. Strengthened by the Pope's blessing and these affirmations from God, Ignatius and his companions prepared for their greatest step yet, the formal founding of their new spiritual family. By 1539, Ignatius and his band of friends had discerned that they were called to stay together, not just as individual priests, but as a new religious community. After much prayer and discussion, they drafted a plan for a brotherhood that would serve the church wherever the need was greatest. They proposed a novel vow. In addition to poverty and chastity, they vowed obedience to a superior and to the Pope's missions, pledging to go wherever in the world the Pope might send them. Pope Paul III was impressed by their zeal. On September 27, 1540, he officially approved this new order with a papal bull. The companions had called themselves the Compañía de Jesús, the Company of Jesus, and now they were formally the Society of Jesus, known as the Jesuits. When it came time to choose the first leader, superior general, all eyes turned to Ignatius. Ever humble, he begged his brothers to reconsider and even held a second vote, but the result was the same. Ignatius was unanimously elected to lead the society. With tears and reluctance, he accepted this burden as God's will. On April 22, 1541, in a simple ceremony at the Church of St. Paul outside the walls, Ignatius and his companions pronounced their vows together, sealing the birth of the Jesuit order. The soldier-turned-mystic was now a founder and general of a new kind of army, one that would fight not with swords, but with faith, learning, and love. Ignatius now took charge as the first superior general of the Jesuits. Though his heart burned to be in the streets teaching or in distant lands converting souls, he obediently remained in Rome, directing this growing missionary order from a modest set of rooms. He spent the next 15 years pouring his energy into letters and instructions, guiding Jesuits scattered across continents with paternal care. Under his leadership, the Society of Jesus grew from a tiny group of 8 companions to about 1,000 members by the time of his death. They fanned out across Europe and beyond, venturing as far as Brazil, Ethiopia, India, and Japan to spread the gospel. Education soon became one of their hallmark ministries. Ignatius hadn't initially planned on running schools, but he realized that nurturing minds and souls through education was one of the best ways to help souls and renew the church. By 1548, Jesuits had opened colleges in Italy, Spain, Germany, and beyond. Civic leaders and bishops begged for more, seeing how these schools uplifted communities and prepared future leaders. In all their work, Ignatius urged his brothers to labor ad Majorem Dei Gloriam, for the greater glory of God. This became the motto of the Jesuits, encapsulating Ignatius's driving motivation. Even as they taught mathematics or explored new lands, the Jesuits' ultimate aim was to glorify God and find God in all things. Ignatius's practicality and mysticism combined in the Jesuit way. They were contemplatives in action, equally at home in prayer or in the marketplace, so long as they served God and neighbor. Despite his stern self-discipline and military efficiency, Ignatius was known by those close to him as a man of great warmth and love. One companion, Father Luis Gonzalez de Camara, noted that Ignatius seemed all love, and all who met him felt genuinely loved by him. This compassionate spirit infused everything Ignatius did. He wrote thousands of letters offering spiritual counsel to people from kings to peasants. He welcomed orphans and cared for the sick in Rome when plague struck. His life was marked by humility, signing his letters simply as Ignatius, the sinner. And though he had many mystical graces, we recall the visions at Manresa and Storta, his true holiness shone through in his deeds of love and his constant desire to do all for the greater glory of God. As he aged, Ignatius suffered chronic stomach pains and other ailments, reminders of his intense past penances and labors. Yet he continued working tirelessly, refining the Jesuit constitutions and guiding the order with wisdom. Finally, on July 31, 1556, sensing his end was near, Ignatius sent his secretary to fetch the Pope's blessing. Before the blessing could arrive, Ignatius quietly passed away in the early hours, surrendering his soul into God's hands. The battle-worn soldier of Christ went to his Lord in peace. He was 64. In the centuries that followed, Ignatius's influence only grew. He was beatified in 1609 and declared a saint in 1622, alongside his friend Francis Xavier. The Church established July 31, the day of his death, as his feast day, honoring the remarkable journey of this worldly knight turned otherworldly saint. The legacy of Saint Ignatius of Loyola lives on vibrantly today. The order he founded, the Jesuits, went on to establish universities and schools on every continent, educate millions, and produce scholars, scientists, artists, and even a pope. In fact, Pope Francis is a Jesuit, the first ever to become pope, a testament to Ignatius's enduring impact on the Church's leadership and vision. Ignatius's spiritual exercises are still practiced by people around the world, both religious and lay, through retreats and daily prayer, guiding souls to discern God's will, just as Ignatius learned to do in Loyola. He is honored as the patron saint of spiritual retreats and also of soldiers, fitting for a man who bridged the life of a warrior and a mystic. Most of all, Ignatius's emphasis on finding God in all things resonates in our modern search for meaning. His life teaches that every experience, success or failure, suffering or joy, can be a path to encounter the divine. From the cannonball that broke him emerged a new mission that has brought faith and education to countless people. His journey from vanity to holiness gives hope that no matter how far we stray or how low we fall, grace can still transform us. Around the globe, in Jesuit schools and parishes, in outreach to the poor and dialogues with cultures, the spirit of Ignatius continues to work for the greater glory of God. It inspires people to be contemplatives in action, to seek justice and serve others, and to never cease asking, what more can I do for Christ? In the end, Saint Ignatius of Loyola shows us that a heart set on fire by God can truly change the world. His life's melody plays a dramatic arc, from the clash of swords on a fortress wall to the hush of a cave in prayer, from the halls of Paris to the corners of the earth, always moving from one degree of glory to another. Ignatius taught us to let go of the ego's dreams and instead dream with God, to labor not for our own honor, but for a purpose far greater. His story is an invitation to transformation. No wound or setback is wasted, for even a cannonball moment can become the gateway to grace. May we, like Ignatius, seek God in all things and do all things for God's greater glory. Thank you for joining us on this inspiring journey of faith and courage. If you found hope and meaning in Ignatius's story, please like this video and subscribe for more spiritual biographies. Until next time, may we all, in our own lives, heed the quiet voice of God calling us, as Ignatius did, to something more. Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam, to the greater glory of God.